Um, this is for chapter 1. So they called him Moishi the Beetle, as if his entire life he had never had a surname. He was the jack of all trades in a Hasidic house of prayer, a Shidduch. The Jews of Sigetz, the little town in Transylvania where I spent my childhood, were fond of him. He was poor and lived in utter penury. As a rule, our townspeople, while they did help the need, Mushy the Beetle, as a rule, our townspeople, while they did help the needy, did not particularly like them. Moishi the Beetle was the exception. He stayed out of people's way. His presence bothered no one. He had mastered the art of rendering himself insignificant. He had mastered the art of rendering himself insignificant, invisible. Physically, he was as awkward as a clown. His waif-like shyness made people smile. As for me, I liked his wide, dreamy eyes gazing off into the distance. He spoke little. He sang, or rather he chanted, and the few snatches I caught here and there spoke of divine suffering, of the Shekinah in exile, where according to Kabbalah it awaits its redemption linked to that of man. I met him in 1941. I was almost 13 and deeply observant. By day I studied Talmud, and by night I would run to the synagogue to wipe over the destruction of the temple. So the Kabbalah is ancient wisdom revealing how the universe and life works. Synagogue is a Jewish house of prayers, same thing as a shtibel. Puning extreme poverty, rendering making the Shekinah and exiles presence of God on earth or symbol. It's our symbol of his presence. Yes. Why is he called Moishi the Beetle? That's a question. One question. One day, I asked my father to find me a master who could guide me in my studies of Kabbalah. You are too young for that. Maimonides tell us that one must be 30 before venturing into the world of mysticism, a world fraught with peril. First, you must study the basic subjects, those you are able to comprehend. My father was a cultured man, rather unsentimental. My father was a cultured man, rather My father was a cultured man, rather unsentimental. He rarely displayed his feelings, not even within his family, and was more involved with the welfare of others than with that of his own kind, with that of his own kin. The Jewish committee of Sighet held him in highest esteem. His advice on public and private matters were frequently sought. There were four of us children: Hilda the eldest, then B, I was the third and the only son. Zipporah was the youngest. My parents ran a store. Hilda and B helped with the work. As for me, my place was in the house of study, or so they said. There are no Kabbalists in Sighet, my father would often tell me. He wanted to drive the idea of studying Kabbalah from my mind. In vain. I succeeded on my own in finding a master for myself in the person of Moishi the beetle. He only watched me one day as I played at dusk. "Why do you cry when you pray?" he asked, as though he knew me too well. "I don't know," I answered, troubled. I had never answered myself that question. I cried because something inside me felt the need to cry. That was all I knew. "Why do you pray?" he asked after a moment. Why did I pray? Strange question. Why did I live? Why did I breathe? "I don't know," I told him, even more troubled and ill at ease. "I don't know." From that day on, I saw him often. He explained to me with great emphasis that every question possessed a power that was lost in the answer. Man comes closer to God through the questions he asks him. He liked to say, "Therein lies true dialogue. Man asks and God replies. But we don't understand his replies. We cannot understand them, because they dwell in the depths of our soul and remain there until we die. The real answers, Eliezer, you will find only within yourself." "And why do you pray, Moishi?" I asked him. "I pray to the God within me for my strength to ask him the real questions." We spoke that day almost every evening, remaining in the synagogue for long after all the faithful had gone, sitting in the semi-darkness where only a few half-burnt candles provided a flickering light. One evening, I told him how happy I was to not be able to find To not be able to find a master to teach me the Zohar, the Kabbalistic works, the secrets of Jewish mysticism. He smiled indulgently. After a long silence he said, "There are 1,001 gates allowing entry into the orchid of mystical truth. Every human being has his own gate. We must not err and wish to enter the orchid through a gate other than his own. That would present a danger not only for the one entering, but also for those who are already inside." And Moishi the beetle, the poorest of the poor of the Sigget, spoke to me for hours on end about the Kabbalah's revelations and its mysteries. Thus began my initiation. Together we would read over and over again the same page of the Zohar, not to learn it by heart, but to discover within the very essence of the divinity. And in the course of those evenings I began convinced that Morshi the beetle would help me enter eternity, into that time when question and answer would become one. And then, one day, all foreign Jews were expelled from Sighet, and Moishi the beetle was a foreigner. Crammed into the cattle cars by the Hungarian police, they cried silently. Standing on the station platform, we too were crying. The train disappeared over the horizon. All that was left was thick, dirty smoke. Behind me, someone said, sighing, "What do you expect? That's war." The deportees were quickly forgotten. A few days after they left, it was rumored that they were in Galicia working, and even that they were content with their fate. Days went back, then weeks and months. Life was normal again. A calm, reassuring wind blew through our homes. The shopkeepers were doing good business. The students lived among their books, and the children played in the streets. One day, as I was about to enter the synagogue, I saw Moishi the beetle sitting on a bench near the entrance. He told me what had happened to him and his companions. The train with the deportees had crossed the Hungarian border and once, in Polish territory, had been taken over by the Gestapo. The train has stopped. The Jews were ordered to get off and onto waiting trucks. The trucks headed toward a forest. There everybody was ordered to get out. They were forced to dig huge trenches. When they had finished their work, the men from the Gestapo began theirs. Without passion or haste, they shot their prisoners who were forced to approach the trench one by one and offer their necks. Infants were tossed into the air and used as targets for the machine guns. This took place in the Galician forest near Colomé. How had he, Moishi the beagle, been able to escape? By a miracle. He was wounded in the leg and left for dead. Day after day, night after night, he went from one Jewish house to the next, telling his story and that of Malka, the young girl who lay dying for 3 days, and that of Toby, the tailor who begged to die before his sons were killed. Moishi was not the same. Joy in his eyes were gone. He no longer sang. He no longer mentioned either God or Kabbalah. He spoke only of what he had seen. My people not only refused to believe his tales, they refused to listen. Some even insinuated that he only wanted their pity, and that he was imagining things. Others flatly said that he had gone mad. Jews. As for Moishi, he wept and pleaded. Jews, listen to me. That's all I ask of you. No money, no pity, just listen to me. He kept shouting in synagogue, with prayer at dusk and evening prayer. Even I did not believe him. I often sat with him after services and listened to his tales, telling to understand his grief. All I felt was pity. They think I'm mad, he whispered, and tears, like drops of wax, flowed from his eyes. Once I asked him the question, "Why do you want people to believe you so much? In your place, I would not care whether they believed me or not." He closed his eyes as if to escape time. You don't understand, he said in despair. You cannot understand. I was saved miraculously. I succeeded in coming back. Where did I get my strength? I wanted to return singing. You, my destiny, you might be ready yourselves. Well, that time. Life? I no longer care to live. I am alone. But I wanted to come back to warn you. Only no one is listening to me. This was toward the end of 1942. Therefore, life seemed normal once again. London radio, which we were listening to every evening, announced encouraging news. The daily bombings of Germany and Stalingrad, the preparation of the Second Front, and so we, the Jews Sigurd, waited for those better days that surely were soon to come. I continued to devote myself to my studies, Talmud during the day and Kabbalah at night. My father took care of his business in the community. My grandfather came to help Rosh his Hannah with us so as to attend the services of the celebrated Rebbe of Borscht. My mother was beginning to think it was high school time to find an appropriate match for Hilda. Thus passed the year 1943.